they have some way of carrying a thing or two on the, a backpack or basket or something, that they know to use a lock so their bike doesn't disappear, and just try to get normal people riding bikes more. And I'm pretty much open to anything that a nucleus of people can get excited about working on. So at this point, it's very preliminary. It's just let's brainstorm and let's come up with something. So if any of you are interested in joining the effort, or if you know of other people who are, if you would just send me your name in an email, and we'll try to get something going. So I appreciate your time and your work, and hope to hear from some of you. Thanks.
Thanks, Sue. Does anyone on the committee want to kind of speak a little bit towards some of the things that we already have going, just to so that everyone's aware of it? Such as smart trips and things like that.
I'll just mention really quick that later in the presentation, or later in the meeting, I'm going to talk a little bit about a program that we're doing separate from the Smart Trips program, that is centered around things that the city is doing for CAP 2.0. And it's the SHIFT campaign that I mentioned last time, and how we're integrating that campaign. The first piece of the campaign will be around the 13th. And that's sort of what we're doing to promote infrastructure and to just get people out trying new infrastructure, because it's true, just because you build it doesn't necessarily mean they'll come. They have to know that it's there to use it. But I also am, a big advocate of advocacy, and I think that there's a lot that the community can do, and so I applaud any work that Sue does to gather other people to do that important work.
Great. Okay. Do we have any other public comments?
That's currently it, unless anyone else would like to raise their hand. So that looks like it for now, and no other chat or Q&A has come in. Okay, great. Okay, thanks. So the next thing on the agenda looks like approving last month's minutes. Does anybody have any comments to make about it? Would anybody like to motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
And a second. All in favor?
I'll just make my thumbs up verbally.
Thanks, Bob. All right, so approved. And next on the agenda, moving right along, we have Active Transportation Committee communication with Lee and Reed. So I'll hand it off to the two of you to talk about that.
Reed, I was thinking maybe you would start out.
Okay. So in the past, we have had a communications committee, and what they did is they would go to the Sustainability Commission or Planning Commission, but usually city council meetings, and just kind of talk to them about what's happening in the walking and biking world locally. In other words, hey, it's construction season. We've noticed that we're not doing a good job with detour signs, or hey, a new project just opened up. I've been using it. It's fantastic. I can finally ride with my kids. I'm thrilled. We need to do more of this, so that they get a better idea of what's going on, why it's important, and if it has value or not. And I'm concerned that they don't hear enough from folks who are happy, and they don't hear enough about ongoing efforts. They only know when something is broken. They only know when we're trying to do something, but it's hard, that sort of thing. And so in the past, through this committee, there were some folks that would gather without staff, sort of talk through what they thought those issues were, or celebrations, just messages to council that could benefit them in decision making or budgeting or whatever. and just do that periodically so that they have a better idea of where these investments are going, who's benefiting from them. If there are still problems that haven't been solved, let them know that sort of thing. And so I think there's been interest expressed by members of this committee that we should do more of that again. And so what I wanted to do with this agenda item is just have a little bit of time for folks to talk about what that could look like, who might want to participate, what sort of messaging you would like to get out there. We talked a little bit about it internally with staff, and we could be a part of that messaging, but I think it's more effective coming from individuals so that you're having peer communications with other folks in the community and saying, you know, I belong to the ATC, I'm speaking on my own behalf. Here's the things that we're working on. I wish we would do more of this. But unfortunately, you know, we can't because of this. For example, I wish we would do more path maintenance, but you only allocate $10,000 a year. We can't do any maintenance with that. That sort of thing, just so that it's in their mind, it's something that they hear about, and they know that it's important, you know, it's something that we should focus on. So I think that's the introduction I wanted to give. Lee, if you have anything to add, go ahead. Otherwise, I would like to open it up to the members and just kind of, let's talk through what some of these subjects might be, whether it's funding or safety or all ages and abilities or new stuff opening or why haven't we ever fixed or whatever that stuff is. I think it's important just to have a voice.
Hey, Reed, I just go ahead and open it up to the committee members.
So I think this is a really important thing, you know, if for nothing else than to have us be, you know, this committee be more in tune with what's happening on the policy side.
So I strongly concur. Daniel, I'm curious.
Oh,
Julie, you're muted.
yeah, we lost you.
I was curious how this jives with what Daniel mentioned last month and is maybe on, you know, I don't have the agenda in front of me, but we were going to talk about, is this along the lines? Is yours a little bit different? Could this be one thing? And then just a question to staff. How about, I mean, because sometimes, you know, the in-person meetings, whether there's Zoom or, you know, that can be challenging to get people to, but emails are also, you know, a possibly effective means. And is that something that you did in the past where you emailed individual councillors or the council or the planning commission, or was it always in person? If you could give us a little more history on that. Thank you.
Julie, this is the same thing. The program subcommittee discussed it at Reed's suggestion originally.
Yeah, so in the past, we would have infrastructure subcommittee, we'd have usually a program subcommittee, and then we had some folks who wanted to do the communication subcommittee. So we sort of had the three. Two of those were staffed and we didn't really participate in because we were sort of asked to stand back from, but we would provide information when asked about what's happening in the policy world, what kind of code changes are happening, why can't we do speed limit reductions, what would be helpful to tell council that we should be working on, those sorts of things. And so staff is here to help you have those conversations. I think it's important for you to come up with, I don't know if it's a shared document or something, but you know, some kind of a list where you know what you're going to talk about. I know that previous committee said, okay, in October, we're going to start talking about leaf collection. In November, December, we're going to say, hey, if it snows, we really need you to be on top of that. You know, and then like spring and winter, it's about, you know, putting your lights on. Maybe there are some facilities that opened up that you're really happy with, or maybe you don't have enough of, or access is somehow bad. Messaging about, you know, just being visible at night, that sort of thing happens over the winter, over the summer. Lock your bike, that sort of thing. But, to sort of have a schedule about what to talk about, maybe even assigning who would attend meetings, and then working on whatever that messaging might be. And again, we can provide input on that. There was interest expressed by the committee about how to do something like that. And we're open to whatever you would like to do. And I think this is on your own time. So as a citizen, you can go ahead and do this. You can identify yourself as a member of the ATC, but you're speaking on your own behalf. And, here's some things that the ATC is working on that I really like. Here's some things personally that I wish we would focus on. Those sorts of things, just so that we have a voice at council and they know that ATC is doing stuff. ATC has been written into the pavement bond measure, and that's because they were vocal. We're very vocal about how to spend pavement bond money. And so, you were sort of written into that language. You could have a larger role, or just, have more direct communication with counselors even. I think that that's appropriate, again, as a citizen, but you could identify yourself as being a member of this committee and saying, here's the information that I've been getting. Just wanted you to know that it sounds like maybe this isn't happening, or, I wish you would do a better job of something. I think it's okay to have that direct kind of communication. And quite frankly, it's communication that we as staff don't generally have. And so I think it would be an effective way to have this committee be heard. Potentially, if there are initiatives you'd like to see launched, that's a good way to start talking about them. If there's advocacy or events going on, it's a good way to let folks in the community know that they're happening. I think all of that is important, and we're willing to support you in however you'd like to do that.
Reed, I think you had a really great summarization there of things. And I can tell you my own experience in serving in other roles where I've gone to council and said, I am on something X, but I am actually speaking on my own behalf. I've had really good traction with them listening to what I've had to say, and in talking to individual counselors about different things relating to what I do, and really, we, I think, can do some things in a way that staff can't, because they just, there has to be that sort of separation of staff from the political side. But we're not bound by that, and I think we can be a very powerful voice to advocate for things. And this is, I think, is a great thing. I'd actually like to be a part of it.
I would agree that was a great summary, Reed. And the method of communication that I think could work well to the greatest number of citizens would be the Nextdoor app. I think I would imagine that all the neighborhood leadership council is on that platform. And so it's a way for them to be able to gather information from us about what's going on at the city and our concerns. And I agree with the idea of having a schedule for us to raise regular issues with council, and for us to sign up and show up on a consistent basis.
So Julie asked about whether email was a good way to reach out to counselors. And I think the answer is any avenue open to us, we should take advantage of that. Going to city council and speaking in person, I think was more impactful when you could actually go to city council and speak in person. I think it's become more challenging over Zoom because your face is not there and they're not seeing you to actually connect with them. And so, we're all represented by a city councilor in our ward, and sort of building that relationship, I think, would be very valuable to both the committee and the council, because they know who to go to when they have a question about a project or an issue.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Josh, and everyone who spoke before that. I think like we should, as members of this committee, should be communicating as much as we can with the public anyway, and with other groups about what we're doing. But I think having some folks that are designated to be the sort of communicators will kind of make sure that we're not missing any important groups or any important organizations to communicate with. And then those folks can bring information back to these meetings that they've learned in their communication, and I think would just kind of help make things better overall in terms of not just the understanding of what's happening, but also just awareness of what we've been doing on this committee that a lot of people probably aren't aware of. So I think it's a great idea.
I think it would be excellent to write down some like common talking points. So whether it's about specific projects or just seasonal, like Reed was mentioning, maybe we could have a spreadsheet or a Google Doc that's like, here's some talking points, here's all the different meetings coming up, and then we could just go in and put our names in, you know, if we're going to do that. So I think some way to track it and to be kind of on a similar page about what we're talking about would be helpful.
And I also think that Julie's suggestion, I think a two-pronged approach of going to meetings, but also doing some individual, outreach to our own ward person, I think is really helpful, because I think that they're pretty responsive to the people that are in their ward.
That sort of depends on which ward you live in. Because in some wards, it's very difficult to get any response from your city council at all. So a question I have has the budget committee ever been included in these discussions? Since, one of my frustrations as somebody who's very new to this world and is learning about it is that we have these great plans. There's nothing, we have a really good climate action plan that's got a lot of teeth to it. We've got the transportation plan, but the money doesn't follow the plan. If you want to increase the number of people using active transportation, then you have to take the money away from cars and put it towards active transportation. You can't just be sort of funding it around the edges. And so I'm just curious whether that kind of work has been done in the past, of really kind of putting more pressure on the decision makers, from every possible body, that if you want to make the change, then you have to fund it. You can't have it both ways, just curious.
Yeah, in the past, there has been representation on the budget committee. And I think direct communication, I've certainly had communication with members of the budget committee who are curious about things. But I agree, I think that's one of many committees that we could be reaching out to about certain objectives. Yeah. Would it help if there was I guess I don't know if it's a Google Doc or a OneDrive or whatever it is, where you could start to park these ideas in this calendar of events, and maybe we could get something going that shows when the events are going to start happening that you could include in your conversation. But then the rest of it would be up to you. I mean, if whatever's burning on you that day, hey, I got beeped at on my way to work because I was in a crosswalk, that sort of thing. I still think it's worth talking about that stuff, because we haven't solved some of these problems. We haven't done a good job with crosswalk compliance. We don't generally do a good job with some things. And, it's good to, let counselors know that we still haven't solved it. And so I would envision, so I guess what I'm asking for right now is if you'd like us, city staff, to set up a page or something and then send out a link, we can do that. Just let us know what that is. And I think what we know right now is what sort of events are happening and when, those sorts of things. And then if you start to fill in the sorts of subjects that you're interested in, then we could potentially provide some more information also. Or you can develop your own narratives too. I think that that's fine. it's also good to, to let us know when you went to council. And so, we can make that a part of our regular agenda too, is, hey, I went to council. This is what I talked about. This is the response that I got. It was, really overwhelming, or, it was really heartening to hear that I was supported, or whatever that outcome was. I think that that's important too. So would you like us to put something together? What do we want to do here? How do we want to move forward?
I think that we need to have someone who's willing to take leadership in this committee, and for us to meet on a regular basis, perhaps once a month, to have some discussion and organize our priorities.
Yeah, this feels like a 2 or more person thing.
Is there somebody who's interested in taking a lead?
I'm really interested in this, but I'm very hesitant to commit right now. And I'm afraid that might be how it is for a lot of folks. So we could also consider other ways to make this sort of thing happen. We could, as Reed suggests, have a place to kind of parking lot these ideas. And maybe when something comes up, we can bring it when it becomes more important enough.
I think it would be helpful, it is really difficult in the time of COVID to have, informal meetings where we get together. I personally found Zoom meetings very challenging to get anything really done. They're just so stilted. It's just very, very difficult. So until we have that option, it would be helpful to, if there is something that staff would really like us to be out there doing, I'd like to hear about it, because I'm very willing to write emails. I'm very willing to make a phone call, to people I have a phone number for. And, I do like the idea, I was glad to hear about the budget committee, because that kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone. It's got all the councilors and all the budget committee. That sounds like a very good place to be speaking up. But I don't have the bandwidth. My life is like too all over the place to sort of take a lead on this. And I think it does take, I feel it's unfair to staff, but on the other hand, these are kind of unusual and weird times. And if it was possible to get a little nudging and direction, is like, would you please speak up about this? I'd be very willing to do that. And I'd love there to be a parking lot document somewhere that was easy to access. Adria, I was denied access to the document that you sent. So maybe we can download.
Yeah, that was something Daniel put together, and I thought for some reason that he had shared the link with everybody, but I guess not. But I agree. I think a collaboration doc would be great. And also thinking about priorities, reading through the strategic plan and then the report from 2017, a lot of things jumped off, to me about priorities, about things that we could put immediately in that document that I have questions about, like how much has been achieved and things that we could really work on in terms of getting the word to council people.
Yeah, so I'm terming out at the end of this year, so there's not much I can do about it, but I think this is a really great idea. And I think one way that might work is if kind of the committee-wide kind of adopts a more informal sort of, the entire committee is the communications committee until either you have new people come on, or whenever it's more appropriate to kind of be a little bit more formal about what the subcommittee would be. And then you can sort of do the sort of, living document online where people can volunteer to do the things that work for them and kind of grow it from there and see how it goes and kind of drive what it'll look like from there on. Just an idea.
I should note that the Better Eugene Springfield Transportation has talked about having communication committee as well, and that's been in formation for a while now, and maybe is under the same sort of time duress as many of us, but there might be some room for collaboration there. I also want to, Julie, I want to respond to you, what you said, that I think that this is really an opportunity for members of the committee to speak our concerns and our aspirations. And I don't see this as a time for us to sort of be a mouthpiece for city staff. I mean, there are other avenues for that to happen. So what I'm hearing Reed say is like, this is something you all need to take leadership on, and it's not really necessarily even their place as staff to do that. So this is an opportunity.
Alan, as a response to that, a lot of us are currently time challenged or have other responsibilities. And so right now might be a time where staff can help incubate this effort. And then hopefully someday things will get a little bit easier and we'll be able to take it from there after they provide some initial support.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've been thinking, one of the reasons I'm not stepping up to be a leadership role in this is I'll explain later, but I've taken on a new role. So I'm not sure where my time commitment is going to land on things, but I think if Reed, I like the idea of you creating a starter document, and then as we move into January and February, we have new people get appointed to the ATC. I think it might be good to put this back on the agenda and see if there is more interest, and then have maybe have somebody, see if there's somebody that was willing at that point to step into that leadership role.
And I was going to say just really quick, this is Shane. This seems to tie in well with what Sue had to say as well in the public comments, but different but related. And then I'll make another connection to what Andrea said about the strategic plan, in that I think that this could be some good sort of talking points and ways to think about this for you as we move into this next stage. And this is a great opportunity because we have some time on this agenda item that I'm just going to share something really quick that I wanted to send out to you after this meeting and get a little feedback from you tonight potentially on it. And my plan is to get some feedback from all the ATC members about what they think, how they think we've done on these pieces. I'm working on the report that lays out what we've done, but I want to get your perceptions first and get just a general feel of what people who are connected to this work think we've done and what they think of these individual action items now in the time that we're at. And so for this one, this is just an example of what I'm thinking. And so I would love some feedback on what you think about the scale and the way that I'm asking the question. So it basically just puts the action item up there and then says, we didn't do well on this item, or we did great on this item. Sort of thinking from 2015 to present, pre-COVID, just sort of like up until, it's hard to say what we're doing now because we're doing things totally different, but up into COVID, how do we do on this item? And so I'm sure Josh has a lot of opinions on, this, but everyone's, rate this. And then next is, should this stay in? We should keep this as is. We should do some changes to it, combine it with something else, review this more in depth, or just take it out, or we've finished it. or maybe you have some other thoughts on it. So I'm going to put all the action items into this kind of format. And do you think that that would work well for you if I sent this out? You could just go through boom, 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 boom. You know, I would probably allow you to skip ones that you don't have any opinion on, but generally try and answer just sort of how you feel. And then I can get an idea of like, okay, this is where ATC thinks we are, what they think we should do with this. Does that sound reasonable? Do you have some thoughts or ideas on better scaling or ways that you'd like to look at this? And I'm sorry if it totally shifted what we were talking about, but it seemed like it kind of fit in.
Well, I think it's a fine idea. I'd like there to be a thing is like, I don't know, because some of us have only, I mean, for example, I've only been to maybe 2 meetings in person, and all the rest have been Zoom meetings. And, you know, I'm looking at how many people were in those in-person meetings. When we had a pretty full table, there were lots of people. And here we are in the Zoom meetings, and we have this very small group. And I think that's some of the reluctance to taking on any new roles. There's just not many of us. So I personally don't know a lot. I feel like I don't know a lot. And so I'd like don't know. I don't know. So that I didn't have to just skip every question and have you think, that Julie, she's just ignoring me. No, just let me, let me know. And to return to the previous subject, I do think it's a really good idea for us to collaborate both with Best and with Sue Walling, because we need the bandwidth for one thing. I mean, it would really help us in terms of just having more people and having some different voices and different, there's just not, I mean, I just look around and go, there's not many of us. So that would be a good idea on, that was my concern with just us doing it. It's like, I don't think it's going to happen. There's not enough here. That's why we need a nudge from staff. But if we have a bigger group of people, I think that then that becomes more, more interesting if we could coordinate a meeting time of some kind. God help us.
I'll just say just one thing to respond to what you said, Julia. Sometimes finding out what you don't know is extremely valuable. So I think that's a good exercise in itself. But I would really encourage you, Shane. I think the direction you're going is really right in terms of getting into the strategic plan. I think the most critical thing is the evaluation and planning piece. It's figuring out before you start moving on with your strategic plan, you got to figure out what was done, what isn't done, and how are we doing, and what's more important now. So I think that's exactly the right approach. And it looks like there are an awful lot of options, and you might find you get a little bit of a muddied response from that. But in general, I think that's really the right way to go. And on the communications committee, personally, I sort of communicated this privately to Daniel. I was slightly reticent to join the effort because I can't clearly see what it is. I keep hearing different things. It's a vehicle for us to communicate our personal issues up the chain to council. It's a way to gather up issues from the wards and other advocacy groups, or it's a way of getting a little bit more visibility on what the committee is doing. And all those things are laudable goals, but I'm concerned about forming a committee that is people going in different directions. So I guess what I'd say is I would, as I've said before, I would happily volunteer, maybe bite off a piece of it, volunteer to be part of trying to formulate what, the vision statement or the mission. What is this group doing? And then from there, people can figure out whether they really want to actively participate in it or not.
First of all, maybe Sue wants to be on the
Actually,
ATC committee.
Just because, just to keep it in the format, I think since people are raising their hands on the sidebar, I'll just have
Okay, sorry.
Grace. That's okay. Grace had her hand up, then Josh, and then Andrea. I'll put you in the queue.
Okay.
I have a couple thoughts. One thing is, I think just in terms of the survey, it looked like there were multiple things that you were saying for each option, like how did we do on this, and then also creating a working group. And so that was confusing for me in terms of which one I'm answering to. And then in terms of this topic about the advocacy and communications, it seems like it would be really helpful to create a broader network of people that are advocating for active transportation that's not just the Active Transportation Committee, and have a way to communicate with those folks. And I think that would probably be need to be an effort that just someone takes on, as like, let's start an email list, or let's have like a little sign up for people who are interested, so that we can work with the community members that are really excited about it, as well as just ourselves. And I also have limited capacity starting a new job and getting really involved in community right now. But I think I'm happy to help with kind of the front end of organizing that system and getting it set up so that we're ready to go.
So just for Steve, the problem I see is that frequently processes get to the very end, and then all of a sudden there's this public outcry because things are changing. And that's what council hears, is that, you know, well, why are we doing this? Nobody asked for this. And so I see the value here as being proactive to sort of establish the support for whatever programs or projects are out there in the field, so that they know there are people who support it. And so then when the folks who are concerned about the change start talking, it's not immediately, okay, we need to stop this project and never have protected bike lanes on High Street. So that's the issue I see.
Okay, I'll go now. So I was thinking about Sue. I don't know if she's interested, but maybe she could be recruited for ATC. She seems very interested in these issues. But then also about the survey, one thing that occurred to me as I was reading through the report from 2017 was that the actions are, you know, somewhat, you know, not completely specific. And so, you know, so looking at the chart about what we accomplished or didn't accomplish on these issues, I think it's hard to sometimes just evaluate sort of how, you know, on a scale like that, whether or not we've done really well or not, if you know what I mean. I mean, the metric was like unclear to me. So, so that, you know, and that's, I think, just part of reading through that report. And I think certainly if you didn't even look at that chart, you wouldn't know all the actions, you know, the components of the actions that have been completed.
Yeah, and then Sue did bring up in the chat too, it might be helpful to have a priority ranking of the items in the strategic plan. And I think that I have to think about a priority ranking of, because for me, there's two stages to this of what have we done, and then what do we want to do. And I feel like with the what we want to do, yes, a priority ranking of that, but we don't even know what that is yet, that's going to change. But maybe there is some sort of priority ranking on maybe how well we did with these things. But I think that's what I'm trying to get to with this, is like, well, how do you think we did, and how important do you think this was, whether we should keep doing it or not. Yeah. And so, and as I mentioned, I think I'll definitely add, I like that piece of, I don't have enough information on this action item. And that just tells me like, okay, we didn't do well communicating what we did around this. So, and then Bob was up next, I believe.
All right, trying to unmute myself there. All right, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so the one thing I just wanted to bring up, you know, and kind of talking about this, it kind of segues back to something from during the month when we were talking about communication and what our responsibilities or how we should be communicating outside of formal meetings. And I know that we're not a, you know, we're just an advisory committee, but in our bylaws, that's my grandson in the background, I don't know if you can, but in our bylaws, we talk about, you know, having open communication and having that through our meetings and such. And so maybe this could just be a time for, you know, Shane or Lee to just clarify, you know, how we would, if we did move forward with this, how we would sort of be advocating in some ways to council as a TC. How we would want to do that as far as our rights and roles as a public forum that works through the city.
I'll let Reed or Lee answer that. I think Reed has a pretty good grasp on that and is kind of made it clear in his comments, sort of basic structure of that.
I think you have the freedom to do what you want. And so if we're not going to council as the ATC, you as an individual have a lot of power. And I hope part of what you're learning on this committee is where some of the shortfalls are in terms of either budget or priority or the way that we actually get things done, those sorts of things. And I think it's helpful to tell decision makers like where those roadblocks are, and you know that. So you have the capability to do that right now. I want to thank Josh for bringing up the fact that, often counselors will hear at the beginning of a project and know, okay, we're building this two-way protected bikeway on 13th Avenue, and then they hear nothing until we build it. And then people can't park in front of their house anymore. And it would be good if we had continual voice throughout the planning process to let council know, well, here's where we are now, it's going to be coming. I can't send them a memo every council meeting. I have tried. And so their packets can only be so thick and I can only submit so much stuff. So they're not getting the information that I think they should have. It could be completely part of what this committee does, is to keep our electeds and our decision makers up to date on what is happening, and that there is a robust public process happening or not. And you can decide that too. But it has happened where we've gone through a process and then council finds out about it at the end and goes, well, I didn't know anything about it. Well, it's because it started 3 years ago and because we can't give you updates. And if you don't, browse our website every day or subscribe to all of our newsletters, which there are a lot of them, plus all the emails that they get, you're going to miss stuff. And so really this committee was, I think, the result of some, at that point it was BPAC, but ATC members recognizing that there seems to be a disconnect between what this committee wants to have happen and what they learn and what council knows. And so this is just an opportunity for you to say, hey, I learned some things. Here's what I know. Want you to know that. And I think we can do better. And here's a couple ways we can do that. Or, hey, I'm really frustrated, or hey, I'm really happy. I think it's helpful to be the happy guy at the meeting too once in a while. And, if this group can represent that somehow, I think that would bring a lot of joy to the council. So let's, this can be anything. And I just wanted us to have a conversation about what it could be. And if we want to have, a list or an agenda of things to talk about, if we want to order that in some way, if we want to think seasonally about what we want to talk about, if there are other groups in the community that we should be coordinating with, those are all things that I think we can help you out with. We just want this group to be effective. And, what I don't want to have happen is for people to term out of this committee or decide to drop off this committee because they don't feel like they're being effective. And so I think the communication aspect of this is really important and certainly something that we can support, but in the past we haven't, so that it was more peer-to-peer sharing. But let us know how we can be part of that or how we can help out. And if there are specific messages that you want to have more information about so that you're getting the stats right, or so that you know when something's going to be talked about at council, those sorts of things, staff can definitely help out on that. But so, yeah, that's hopefully my message has been consistent. It's let us know how you want to be heard or you want to be effective. And we'll try to give you a voice in being effective.
Robbie, you had your hand up and I think we're getting close.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think this is a really important really important topic, but we're running out of time. We've actually passed our allotted time for this. So I think as a committee, we should kind of decide whether we want to keep talking about this some more and push some of the other stuff back, or if we want to try to make a decision on this during this meeting. I will let whoever raised their hand next jump in.
And right now, oh, there we go. Daniel.
So I think it would be a good start to try brainstorming some of the ideas, some ideas from staff, and some ideas that we have here. I saw at least one person, Duncan, I think, who was also interested from the attendees, interested in contributing. So yeah, maybe just a shared document that we can start with, and then treat this as kind of a breeding ground, and then when we invite new members in January, revisit this as maybe something that we take more action on. I can reframe that as a proposal, or we can have more suggestions.
Do you want to go ahead and rephrase that as a proposal then?
All right, I propose that we create a shared Google Doc and we add ideas to it for things that we would both like, information we would like to get from various city governing bodies, as well as information we would like to share with those bodies. And then that we share that with the ATC and perhaps the broader community and interested folks. And then in January, one of the items we get to with new members is perhaps forming this into a committee, a communications committee.
So is that a motion?
That is a motion.
I'll second.
Okay.
Oh yeah, or other
All in favor?
Discussion.
Oh, yeah, good point. Discussion. All in favor? Okay, so great. Well, sounds like we made a decision there. I see that Bob has his hand raised. Bob, is this something about this?
No,
before
that
we
was
move on to
just that was just the way for me to vote.
Okay.
I could have done thumbs up if I saw that.
Awesome.
Question. So if this is something that the ATC is doing together, can we share it with other interested parties, or should it just remain with the folks on the committee?
You mean like share a document online via email? Is that what we're thinking?
Yeah, so if there are some interested community members who would like to contribute, does this need to remain just ATC members, or can other people be involved as well? Are we bound in any way?
So the motion that I recorded was propose that ATC creates a shared Google Doc to place ideas for sharing to elected officials and other committees. Let's decide later if we also want to share that with the community. And in January, let's discuss developing a dedicated committee. So I don't know that we have to decide that right now. It sounds like in January, you'll be able to figure out if we have a dedicated committee, and then they can figure out their operating structure.
Great.
Great. All right. Good work, everyone. So let's move on to the 13th Avenue Bikeway project update. And this is also Reed and Shane.
Great. I'll kick it off here. Just to highlight some of the items. So as I mentioned, we're using our new Shift campaign, which has come out of the CAP 2.0, to talk about how we're, as a city, doing different projects and programs to work on our greenhouse gas reduction. And so this is our first project that we've decided to brand with that Shift campaign materials. So you'll be seeing some material come out about that. And so I just wanted to show you, I just threw a couple of these in because we just got these in the last couple of days and are getting posters out and information about 13th regarding these. So we'll just give a quick project update, talk about the soft opening day and some volunteer plans, the celebration week, and our general communication plan and online in-person plans for the celebration. Let me get back to this here real quick. So very exciting. I was out today, and the signal work is continuing. We were hoping to do the soft open on the 12th, and I think most of you who are on the volunteer list have received an email communicating that we're actually shifting that to the 19th. And some of the last signals should be turned on Tuesday, the 13th, but then there's still some punch list items that the contractors have to get to, and then we have to sweep and clean up everything, and then we'll be ready to open. And so realistically, we'll probably be ready by the end of next week, but we don't want to open it at the end of the week because we want staff there to be able to monitor it, to make sure it's all working well, and that if we need to make some tweaks, we can. And that's just harder to do on the weekend. So we're going to open it next Monday. And once we open it, we will have the celebration. And so right after we open it, we'll have staff out there making changes. We'll have volunteers out there monitoring it, giving us feedback on what's working, what's not, see if there are tweaks that we can do to it. I was out at Alder today and they turned on the signal. So this is Alder looking to the north, and the bike signal that's there. It used to be when you were coming from going southbound, coming from the other direction there, that you would get the signal at the same time as the cars. But now the signal timing is different in that it matches all the rest of the corridor, in that if there are any turn conflicts with cars, bikes and cars move at different times. And so you won't be cut off by a car turning left here because you will have your own signal phase. And so that's been changed to that, as have all of these other signals. And so there'll be separate bike signals from car signal timing. And so that's what a lot of the logistics is and has been in getting the timings right, and we'll see if we continue to get that right. But it's pretty exciting because I've been able to work with Cass. Cass has been doing a really great job in creating this campaign that is our Let's Shift Lanes celebration of our new protected bikeway on 13th. And we are going to have some physically distanced group rides, and some of you might be helping to participate or do some of those. We have businesses along with Corridor who are going to be offering special deals during that time. A Film by Bike film festival that will be outdoors and limited capacity with 2 showing times. And then some live stream events where we'll do a coffee outside and do a live stream where we talk to people who are involved in the early process and the build process and talk about what this means to the community. People can call in and ask questions or just stop by and talk to us at our coffee outside event. And then we're also going to do some drop by the shop times with Peace Health Rides, where people can come in and virtually come into the shop and ask questions. So we'll have a Zoom line where they can call in and ask any questions about Peace Health Rides, mechanical questions, legal questions, any sort of thing. And so that's a fun thing that we'll be doing with Peace Health Rides crew in their shop during that week. All of these events are listed now. You can go to either hugefun.org or to our transportation planning website. There's a Facebook event. We have a huge, big communication plan that we're working on to make sure the word gets out through the university, through the business community, community at large. And we really want to celebrate the opening of this. It's we were, looking at, we know this is a big impact on some businesses, and we really want to encourage people to get out and support those businesses. We just recognize how important this type of infrastructure is to our transportation system plan and in shifting people's ways of choosing how they get around. I know that many people from ATC have already signed up to volunteer to come out and help. But we also really need your help and support in getting the word out and communicating to people about this protected bikeway and why it's there, and how it's part of our larger transportation system plan, how it's the second of our protected bikeway systems that we put in after East Amazon, and it's part of a network that we're creating, and how and why you think it's important to that. And then encouraging people to get out and use it, whether it's during this celebration week or anytime after, to get out and try it with their families. I'm hosting a Kittico Mass ride on the Sunday of that celebration week. And instead of riding as one group, we are riding during the day anytime, sort of focused around 3 to 5. We'll try and fill the bikeway with families, take some great pictures, really help communicate who we're building these type of infrastructures for. So that's really a basic overview, but I wanted to leave time for like specific questions you had about either celebration, design, build, and I'll let Reed see if he has anything, and then we can take some questions.
The only addition I would have to that, Shane, thanks, that's a really good summary, is that we're going to be following this project up next spring in 2021 with an amenities project. So David Miner lost his life on 13th Avenue at Willamette Street. There's currently a ghost bike there. We're going to build a memorial there. The Miner family has dedicated $150,000 to the corridor. And in November, the naming rights of the bikeway is actually going to City Council. And so it could be called the 13th Avenue David Miner Bikeway. We'll know more in November. But all of those amenities, including things like lean rails at the signals, which would make us very Copenhagen-y. So that would be cool, but we would also have branded colors and potentially sign toppers and some other things along the corridor. That is a completely separate project, and it follows this federal project so that we didn't mix the monies together and get ourselves in trouble. So next spring, we'll come back to the corridor and do some more work. But basically our soft opening on the 19th ends the infrastructure project with the concrete and signals. And then the thing is open. And so, yeah, we hope you'll get out there and ride with us, because it should be transformational. We're hoping that it is.
And I'll note that Reed is going to lead a ride on the Monday of the opening, or no, the Friday of the opening day, the first official celebration day. It'll be open before that, but he'll lead a ride with Aaron, I believe, talking about the construction and just the project in general, and some of the cool things along the corridor. And I think we're also, Cass and I are working on a plan to lead a staff and city leadership meeting where we would bring city council members and the executive team on a ride. So show them what this facility is. And so that will hopefully be part of that communication of here's the project, here's what it means, from the staff side.
What kind of evaluation will the new protected bike lane have, and what kind of metrics might there be?
Reed, do you want to talk about counts?
So one of the things that we think we're going to do with the amenities project is we're going to add a counter, a visible counter, like an obelisk or a sign that actually shows how many people rode that corridor that day and that year. So we're definitely going to add counters to the corridor. That's not going to happen at opening. Obviously, we have, well, not obviously, but we have recordings at all of the intersections. And so I think we're going to want to find out if there are crashes happening, why they are happening, and we can actually go back and review the footage. So I think that's going to be important as well. But this wasn't developed so that we would reach a certain number or threshold of riders. This was developed for all ages and abilities and for the connection between the university and downtown, and to hopefully fix a safety condition, which was people riding contraflow on 13th Avenue. And so this should accomplish all of that. You know, we're going to tell the story hopefully through ridership and testimonials, and Hopefully very low crash rates, if any. Yeah, so this wasn't meant to meet a certain threshold of, I guess, ridership or anything like that. So not a whole lot of evaluation. I guess the other thing we can do is when hopefully, if post COVID, we can do intercept surveys too and figure out if this is actually changing people's transportation choice. So in other words, people who would normally drive to campus feel like they have a safe way to do that now, and we can record that. But again, I think this is going to be more qualitative in terms of testimonials and things like that. The hard data we'll collect is going to be either crashes or absolute numbers of ridership.
And we are going to have tube counters before any of the permanent counters go in, right? To get, we'll request some tube counters to go down just to
I
get
mean,
some
it would be
basic
over
numbers.
the winter, Shane. So I mean, we always have trouble figuring out like when to put
Yeah.
it there, and so
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. And we do have interesting data from the Peace Health Rides bikes that were, that I've been looking at a lot recently. And 13th has always been a pretty big corridor, and then it's really been split about what other ways people go, 11th and 12th and 15th. So it'll be interesting to see how dark that line becomes when we look at that heat map down the line. So Robbie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a quick comment to make on the design. I walked it a couple weeks ago and it wasn't quite done yet. So what I'm about to say might be old information. But one of the things that I noticed, and I thought it was great. One of the things I noticed though was at the places where there's driveways, there's bollards on the bike paths part of it to protect cars, I assume, from coming through. And those tend to be for in the eastbound direction, which makes sense because it's a one-way street and you would expect cars to go that way. But I had a thought that maybe people that don't know that the bike path is there might also not know that it's a one-way street, and they see this divided street and think that this bike lane is actually a westbound car lane. So it may make sense to have ones on the other side as well, or at the very least, some sort of obvious one-way sign there so that people realize that they're not supposed to drive their car down there. So, but anyways, I'm sure that'll all get worked out once we start seeing it and seeing how it works. So I'm pretty excited about it. And then I think I saw Marina had her hand up as well.
Yeah, talking about the volunteering, I just wanted to know, I think I read some time ago, there will be some instructions sent to volunteers to educate ourselves about it. Yeah,
Yep.
am I right?
Yep. Ophelia, our intern, has been working on the volunteer coordination, and she's sent out some emails to people who have signed up so far. If you have not signed up but you're interested, please feel free to let me know and I'll let her know and make sure that we have your email. But yes, we are, she'll be sending out information to what intersection and times you would be based on what you had requested. And then we have information about that intersection and sort of what you should know about it and what we would like you to be watching for. So you can answer questions if someone's there, that you can sort of monitor, and which things you should be watching for, of sort of how do people make a left turn here, or what are people doing in this certain area.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments about the 13th Avenue Bikeway?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that I saw a great video come across my Facebook feed, I guess today, Reed tooling down the bikeway.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I was going to put that in the comments section.
It's fantastic. And I got it, I sent it around to my small circle of friends, and I got a lot of really positive response to that. Even somebody from Veneta said, "Oh, this is great." I heard from Florence said, "This is great. We've been needing this for a long time." So I just encourage other people who happen to do the Facebook thing to go ahead and send that out to other people.
Yeah, it's on our YouTube channel, and I did share it on our Facebook page. And this was sort of our first, like, hey, this is coming. We have 2 more videos planned. One is a Peace Health Rides pro tip video. So if you know Peace Health Rides, they had a series of pro tip of how to use Peace Health Rides. We're going to do one on a pro tip of how to use Peace Health Rides on 13th. and just a different like wait here and the signal will detect you kind of videos. And then we'll do an overview similar to what we did with East Amazon, where we'll get some cool drone footage and sort of give a picture of the whole system and how this fits into it, and why it was built and the cool features of it. And that'll be something that'll be great to really spread around. We plan to use to talk about the good infrastructure work that we're doing. You know, we've been talking, I've been emailing some listservs to find out, is there any other corridor in the US that has this many bike lights? Because there are 23 bike specific signals. And I talked to the Portland engineer and he's like, 23? He said, maybe New York. So it's pretty cool.
Alan?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify why I asked about evaluation, because I was really thinking ahead to some scenario, whether it has to do with the High and Pearl corridor or some other place where we might be wanting to advocate for protected bike lanes, and city council might be getting some pushback on it. And so if we did have an intercept survey with people, and hopefully they are saying that they love the new protected bike lane on 13th and they want more of them, that our up and coming communications committee then can take that to council and say, look, people love it and we want more of it.
Synergy. Steve's hand is raised too.
I already made my comment earlier, so.
I'll lower it.
Thanks. Great. Anybody else?
We're going to need a lot of that same energy when those 20 miles an hour signs start going out.
Oh, I don't think we had that on the agenda. So I'll just say they're going out. They're going up. Yeah.
Well, if someone says something, just tell them 20 is plenty. All right, moving on. Looks like shared use path funding is our next item. And
So
that is, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, that's me. So I realize that that's sort of redundant with the subcommittee reports, but let me just talk a little bit about path funding. As you all know, we don't get a lot of dedicated path funding. And so when we have grant opportunities, we go after those. ODOT has a new grant called the PATHS program, which is really for shared use path development and I think recreational trail development as well. And so we started to put together a list of projects that we'd like to apply for. And what we've decided as staff is that we would focus on access ways, which are those little shared use paths that connect neighborhoods or schools to an existing shared use path. Examples might be on the West Bank path with those little access ways that shoot off towards River Road. And we recently added street signage to them so that you know what road it shoots off to. But there are 1, 2, 3 more that we could do off the West Bank path. And there are 2 that we could do off the Fern Ridge path that would strengthen connections for people walking and biking to either the West Bank path or the Fern Ridge path. And so what we're currently doing is we're evaluating those using an equity matrix that staff developed for the TSP. And I talked a little bit with the infrastructure subcommittee about that, but what we hope to do is be able to prioritize those 5 different access ways and figure out what our priorities are, and then be able to get a cost estimate and see how many of those we really want to apply for to be competitive. I haven't gone through the application yet. In fact, I don't know if it's even available to know if we can later decide to sort of cut projects. And so we, part of this is guessing how much award we would potentially be eligible for, and then putting together a project that we think would be very competitive. But for that new grant project through ODOT, we plan on doing those access ways. And then secondly, for path funding, I think you know that the parks bond measure had lighting of shared use paths in that bond. And that's what paid for the West Bank path lighting, which, by the way, that project is going to start any day now, where they will start adding lighting to the West Bank path. And then they'll come in next year and actually do the resurfacing. So that lighting was paid for using the parks bond measure. And there was $750,000 allocated to do that lighting, and we spent over $1 million on it. And so what that means is we're sort of borrowing from other paths to get this one path done. And there's a variety of reasons that we decided, along with Parks and Open Space, that this was okay. The primary one being that this is the Riverbank Pass System. This is the jewel of our linear pass system in Eugene, and it should be consistent, uniform, and as safe as we can make it. And so that's just one of those things we're going to have to do, and we're going to have to figure out where that money comes from. And so what I've started to do is I'm working with Parks and Open Space to see how much money was already expended and to sort of develop cost estimates for the rest of the system so that we have a better idea of what we can actually afford, because we are down about $250,000 from where we thought we would be. So again, I talked with the infrastructure subcommittee a little bit about that. And we do have a prioritization of shared use paths where we want to do reconstruction as well as lighting projects. And the Fern Ridge path is the next one on the list. There is one section of the Fern Ridge path that is currently not lit between, I think it's City View and Bailey Hill. And so that was allocated money in the Parks Bond. We'd certainly like to move forward with that. I think that that's a gap in the system. And so again, that's another one where I think we want to spend that money. There are some projects that are somewhat undefined, like lighting in Alton Baker Park. And that doesn't include lighting unlit sections through the Willamette. That is not part of the Parks Bond. It's as, you know, I think it's replacing existing lighting fixtures that use high pressure sodium bulbs with more of an LED fixture, that sort of thing. And that might be where we end up borrowing money from, but I've talked with Parks about that. So just wanted to let you know that hopefully we get some more opportunity to apply for shared use path development through ODOT. And we're going to pursue that. And then with that Parks Bond, we overspent a little bit. And so we're going to have to redo some of our other spending down the road. And we're looking at that. And again, I'm working with the infrastructure subcommittee to sort of decide how we want to move forward with that. But it's nothing urgent yet. This is all good news. We're getting the West Bank path done. Hopefully we get a paths grant and we can build some of those access ways. But you know, at the out year of any grant program or bond program, we sort of have to see, have to check the couch cushions to see how much money we have left, and just see if we can pay all our bills or not. And it's already looking like we're spending more money than we thought we would. And so that's just something to keep in mind as we move forward. Any questions?
Okay, great. Thanks for the update, Reed. Next one doesn't have a name attached. Bike share update.
I can start talking. So on Tuesday, we, meaning representatives from the city, the University of Oregon, Lane Transit District, and Peace Health, reviewed requests for information that we received from 7 different vendors to operate the bike share system. And what we did is we narrowed those 7 down to 4, and we are going to invite 4 different vendors to basically submit a request for proposal. So that's a full proposal, including a business plan. And basically what we hope to do is to get those proposals back, select one of those vendors, and then begin contracting, and that will be our new operator. Hopefully that'll happen this calendar year. We've got about 4 weeks once we submit that to sort of get things back. Then we need time to review them, and then we start the contract work. But we received 7 vendor proposals overall. That's more than we thought we would get. And we're inviting 4. 2 of those are nonprofit and 2 of those are for-profit. I will say that I was really impressed with all of the proposals, but and the nonprofits look really good. The for-profits are in there because they sort of surprised me. They sort of said all the right things, and you know, we're very careful about, you know, how they would spend the money, and, you know, are dedicated to the bike share business, you know, those sorts of things. And so we're going to invite them to propose on on our system, and then, obviously giving them some guidelines. One of the things we want to make sure we do is that we keep our current bikes. We're going to have to upgrade the controllers at some point anyway. And so some of these vendors are like, well, we can use your bikes, but we have to use our controllers. And that seems okay because we're going to have to replace them anyway. So just seeing what those different costs outlays are, and then seeing what the timeline looks like, what our commitment looks like, who we would need to contract with, and then just see what works best for us, for our title sponsor, and for our partner agencies. I think the other part of that is something that Shane and I talked about is strategically, the city may decide to hold on to some of these contracts. For example, we could continue to have the title sponsorship contract with Peace Health, and that gives us a little bit more leverage in the decision-making of whatever these operators end up doing, especially if they're a for-profit. And so I think there are ways to get exactly what we need out of this system, and we're going to be very deliberate about the RFP that we send out and very specific about what we expect and how we expect the system to function, and then hopefully get some great proposals back and then be able to review those and hopefully start the contracting process in a matter of months. So we're moving right along now, which is great news. And then we're going to have to figure out how to retrofit our existing bikes and basically, set up the next chapter of whatever bike share is going to be in the city of Eugene. And so it's an exciting time, really. Shane, anything to add?
As usual, Reed nails it. Thank you for picking that up. I had to move into a quieter space. Yeah, I think you covered everything. I think that when we come out of this, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of silver linings to having Uber pull out of their contract. It was tough, but I think there's some really great advantages in that we're going to be primed to do the kind of things that would have been maybe a little bit more difficult under our previous contract. And that now with the new contract and with us sort of running more of the show and having a little bit more buy-in and understanding the system even more than we did before, I think we're really primed for doing even better. We have good potential to grow the system even. And so, yeah, I'm really hopeful and was really excited as well as Reed to see the 7 RFIs come in and some really strong ones, and to have some local and some nonprofit ones that were really strong. I was really glad to see. And it looks like I didn't see who was first, so I'm going to call on Grace and then Steve. Go ahead, Grace.
Thank you. That's really exciting to hear that bike share is moving right along. I think that's a win all around. I just have a couple of questions. First, I know earlier this year there was talk about like an Oregon-wide bike share system, and I just wanted to see where we landed with that. It sounds like the city is proceeding in our own direction, but just to circle back to that. And
Nope.
then,
Well, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
the second part of the question is just if we could get a little update on any potential scooter timelines now that kind of bike share is moving along.
Yep. Yeah, I'll answer the first one and then try and answer the second one. And I wouldn't say the statewide system is ruled out at all. I think I can say one of the nonprofits that we received was for the statewide system, to where we would be a very pivotal part of a statewide system. And we are still in communication with them, and actually are going to be talking to them sort of separately about how that portion of it is going, so that it'll better inform us on how that might tie into the RFI and RFP process. So that is still a potential. And then with scooters, a decision was made to wait until spring to launch anything. And so we are still in communication with our partners about that. It would be a separate RFP process. This will go out, within 4 to 5 weeks. Well, I mean, the RFP will go out in a couple weeks, hopefully, but then it will take 3 to 4 weeks to go through. So we're working on that RFP right now, and then that'll go out. And so that timeline is much shorter, but then it would be after that we would put out a second RFP for the scooters. And that is the other piece is, these for-profit companies, at least one of the two that we submitted did talk about e-scooters and the potential of e-scooters in their system. I don't remember if both of them had that read, but I know that at least one of them did. And then Steve?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment what great news that is. It's so encouraging that you got such strong RFIs and the fact that I think it's great that you're doing a balance of profit, nonprofit. It puts you, I think, in a really great, strong position for negotiating the right deal. So kudos to the team for that.
Any other thoughts or questions on this one? Got about 3 minutes, it looks like.
Julie?
Yeah, I don't have a button on my screen that I can see anywhere to, raise a hand digitally.
Okay.
Anything I can figure out to do. I just was curious whether there had been any discussion with Peace Health about being the sole sponsor, or whether there's openness, if you've had any discussion with them about any openness to have other kinds of sponsorship, say of ride stations or, any other kind of sponsorship.
I think from my gleaning from understanding that relationship in the contract as it exists, that is a possibility. They're open to having that discussion. I think that they've known that it's been a possibility in some form. They are the title sponsor, and so they sort of have set what they get in that title sponsorship. And then beyond that, we have flexibility to do that. And I think that even more so now that they've been through this process with us, that they are open to us making it work. As the title sponsor, they want it to work. And if we need to bring in other sponsorship, I think they're going to be very supportive of that.
Any other bike share questions, comments, concerns? Looks like we have a comment from Vicky. She's asking, is there any discussion on providing helmets with the new vendor?
That's not currently one of the pieces that we're doing. Peace Health Rides has had an offer with Burn where you can get a discount on a helmet. They've done some helmet giveaways and they've done some other helmet promotional pieces in the past. Just bike share around the country and around the world has found that bike share injury and crash rates are very low. Millions of rides around the world. Helmets have just not been an issue. No bike share is really offering helmets as part of their system. Well, I shouldn't say no. Very, very, very few, if any. There might be a couple small places where there's still fear around that. And so they put some sort of loan system out, but it's very few and far between. And most of the very successful systems don't have any kind of helmet system with them. We encourage people to wear helmets if they're riding the bikes, but it's a very different sort of environment and ride trip that happens, and it's just been found that bike share has really low crash rates and injury rates, and so they just haven't found the right system that has made the helmet systems work well with bike share systems yet.
Thanks, Shane. Marina?
Yeah, I would see an issue now with the COVID-19 and sharing helmets. So yeah, I don't think it looks good. It would look good.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And just on that note, we do have our field techs out there doing sanitation as they do rebalancing and maintenance. But yeah, helmets would be different.
Okay, good point. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so it looks like we're up to the subcommittee reports. Who would like to go first?
I can hop in really quick for the infrastructure subcommittee. Reed already covered a lot of it. We talked about the Oregon Path Program grant as well as lighting. And I think the only other thing that I'd like to add that hasn't already been said was we did talk a little bit about funding and how different funds have to be used, and particularly around the TSP, Transportation System Plan, and whether or not projects have to be in that plan to be funded. And I think one thing that's important to note for the whole committee is that currently intersections are not in the TSP at all. And so it's kind of be a challenge to figure out how to fund those projects and where to do them and how to prioritize them. So I think that's something to think about in terms of general advocacy, and also the next time the TSP is updated to look at that. So anything I'd add.
Thanks, Grace. Anybody else on the subcommittee want to add to that? I think she covered just about everything as I remember. Okay, and then, oh geez, 2020. I can't remember the name of the other subcommittee.
Programs.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we did have a kind of a quick ad hoc meeting since the last time, and we kind of discussed primarily the history of the disaster relief trials and how that might intersect with the bike program. Daniel and I took offline a meeting with the Climate Revolutions group, who also had an interest in that, to see if we could sort of plumb a little bit of the history of what had happened in the past with disaster relief and how that might how we might carry that forward. So there's a lot of discussion, very broad, and I think the ball is in our court right now to kind of define a little bit closer what that might be for the next meetings or our next meeting. So it's not much of an update, but that's kind of what we've done so far. If you want to add anything, Daniel.
More to come.
Thank you for summing up what the program subcommittee covered. So thanks. Okay. So now we are moving on to project updates / info share. Who would like to go first? Nobody has anything?
I'll hop back in. I've got something, which is just that the Oregon Transit Association is doing a free transportation webinar series this month on Tuesdays. I'm going to put the link here in the chat box. And there are all kinds of different topics about transportation and grant writing and lots of good things. So anyone who's interested, I'd encourage you to look at that.
Thank you, Grace. Anybody else have anything they'd like to share? I see Pete with his hand.
I alluded to taking on a new role earlier. I've just recently been appointed to the Lane Transit District Strategic Planning Committee, and so my roles in for the transportation roles seem to be growing, and I already know there's probably going to be some cross pollination with here, and so when those things come up, I will definitely bring them to this committee, and I'm kind of excited about that. So just thought you guys like to know that is something going on.
Thanks, Pete. I know that we've talked a lot on this committee about trying to have more representation, or at least, like you said, cross-pollination with LTD. So that's really good news. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I already sent this to the committee, but for everybody in the audience as well, the Transportation Services at the University of Oregon is released our first ever strategic plan. I sent this to everybody on the committee. For those in attendance, you can find it at our website, transportation.uoregon.edu. There's a big button on the front that says 2020-2025 strategic plan. So feel free to go there and read it. And if you have feedback, email my boss.
Thanks, Josh. Great. Oh,
I
Reed.
threw,
My update is that we restriped 28th Avenue, 29, 28. It turns into 28 when it goes past like Washington, Jefferson. At Friendly was recently restriped. We actually moved the center line a little bit and widened out the bike lanes because there were some really obvious pinch points at that intersection. So our traffic operations crew went out there, ground out the existing striping and moved the center line, moved the bike lanes. And I think we also have some reflective markers now in the bike lanes. So next time you go through there, see if it's better. Let us know how it's going. The next step to sort of prevent encroachment into the bike lanes at that intersection would be some kind of physical separation, whether that be a mountable barrier or something else. So we're keeping our eye on that intersection, but that is something that came up through the Friendly Area Neighbors Transportation Subcommittee. So Ops had some time and went out and did it. So those sorts of projects are things that we can do. And if you see other intersections that need some minor adjustment with the striping, that's something that we can do. So let us know.
yeah, and I'll just on that note, I'll highlight that I had an issue of a signal that wasn't working. And I called 682-4800 because it wasn't detecting my bike. It was a very, I think, uncommon place for bikes to be because it's a sort of a left turn on a uphill. But the next day I got an email that said, hey, I think we fixed this, let us know. So just a reminder to folks to use that number if you're having any kind of issues or notice anything out there. It gets put into a bucket list, and our public works maintenance and that team is really great about getting on those kind of things. I posted a couple links in, and thanks for everyone who's sharing those links. And then Alan also asked, is there a way to save the chat? And I think there is, and I'll figure out a way to get that and make sure that's captured in the notes. So all these great links and information and comments are saved. But I just put another one in there for the Facebook event for the shift lanes on 13th Avenue. Share that, invite people, and join us for that event that week. It should be pretty fun.
Great.
Alan, you have your hand
I
up?
see some hands. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if this was just for the one day that I was trying to write it, but I noticed that the detour to the South Bank path was closed. So there really was no detour to the South Bank path. It looked like there might have been some e-web work being done.
Where was that?
Right near the Campbell Center. So you couldn't get up onto the Ferry Street Bridge to complete the detour. So you're just kind of like SOL.
Okay. Okay.
And there was no signs saying detour to the detour.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. I think there was a sign that just said like detour or something, but it didn't really go anywhere. Yeah, it was pretty confusing.
I do know there's a construction project there, a new building or something. So we'll have to see which utility and.
No, but they're building the steps there by the DeFazio Bridge. And so they may have closed that undercrossing to the DeFazio Bridge.
But that's the other side.
Yeah, it's the other side. And I don't think it was the Campbell Center either. I think it was that road that kind of loops around the street there. I don't know what it's called offhand, but
Third, well, yeah, second or, but there's also some construction happening right behind what is actually the Peace Health Rides the office there, just right on the other side.
That was it. That was it.
Right back there. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I'll check with our field techs too, since they're there, and see if they maybe can see who that is and if we can do some follow-up. Thanks.
Julie?
Okay, here we go. So I just had a question for the group. you know, I ride down High Street every time almost I go downtown. And of course, the leaves are just really across the whole of the bike path in many areas, and also on Good Posture Island, that loop there, that Good Posture loop. Now, there's not much traffic there, but on High Street, you know, your choice is to either ride through the leaves and, you know, hope there aren't perils beneath, or go out into traffic. So I wondered who was the appropriate, you know, who do you call to say, hey, can you sweep these during leaf season so that we're not forced out into the road or risking our tires?
Yep, 682-4800.
And I'm working on pulling up the link. There is a report, online reporting, bikeway service request that you can do. There's both the iBike Huge app should still be working, but you should also be able to do that online to highlight when there are any hazards, and leaves in particular are one of the options that you can select. Work on that.
Yeah, I recorded on the app some limbs that were down a couple weeks ago, and the next day they were gone. So I don't know if it's because of the app or just coincidental, but
Totally the app.
We'll assume that it was. I figured it wouldn't hurt. But yeah, just going back to the leaves and the bike path thing, I know that's been an ongoing conversation ever since I've been on this committee. And sometimes it's just leaves falling off of trees and it just happens, but sometimes people will blow their leaves from the yard into the road. I know that happens a lot. So, and I believe it's illegal to do that. So, yeah, so, I mean, yeah. Maybe the committee at some point can kind of talk into, when they're talking about enforcement of stuff like that, can have a conversation about that if they feel so. Okay, anything else? All right, good meeting, everyone. See you next month.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Night all.